y hago así, mira. Buenas a todos, chavales. Otro viernes más con el Star Citizen Live. En esta ocasión va a subir el pan porque habla Todd Papi y se titula All About Alpha 3.13 o algo así era, ¿no? Todo acerca del Alpha 3.13. Entonces, bueno, ya sabéis que en Spectrum se pueden ir preguntando cosillas y demás y todo el tema. Y pues, a ver un momentito, vamos a empezar ya. Ver foto. Falta un minutillo, lo justo para que me pueda poner un cafecillo y venir. Ahí vengo. Ya casi arranca la cosa.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live, all about Alpha 313. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and we are back in our LA studio. It's as the world slowly begins to return to normal, as more and more people begin to get their vaccine shots. More and more of us are slowly starting the return to the studio. I have now begun that because I'm vaccinated. Get vaccinated. And we thought we'd celebrate by redoing the set. We got a little tired of our red brick. Remember the red brick? It always made me, always felt like I was in grandma's basement doing the show. Not a big fan of the red brick. So one trip to Home Depot, and I just realized my DeWalt is still in the frame. I was literally hanging shelves this morning. And we're back. We're back in the studio. Joining us on the show this week are two of our esteemed pillar directors for the Star Citizen's Persistent Universe. And we'll start with you, Todd, since you're the old hand. You've been here.
I'm just older than Rich.
Vale, decía, ahora sí se me oye, ¿no? Decía que ya le he estado hablando sobre el tema de que ya se ha vacunado, de que están reincorporándose al estudio y demás, y que bueno, que se ha pasado todo el día montando lo que es lo que hay detrás.
The releases that we're doing, as well as many of the features and content that we're putting in.
Yeah. And Rich, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Hello, I am Rich Tyra. I am the core gameplay director for Star Citizen. So I cover everything that is to do with the character and actor. So all of the FPS side of things, like weapons and all the other like systemic core gameplay, such as like physical damage or inventory or actor status and all of the things that sit on top.
Yeah. Now, this week's show is all about Alpha 313. Our 313 patch is currently available on the PTU for testing as it makes its way, through the various PTU phases on its way to our live environment. While the show is entitled All About Alpha 313, I do want to state that we do not have members from every single one of Star Citizen's team here for Alpha.
Está comentando de que el, el parche 3.13 está para testear, ya lo sabéis. Y que no todos los miembros del equipo que han hecho posible la 3.13 están aquí, obviamente. El que está arriba, o sea, el que está abajo es el puto amo, y el que está a la izquierda arriba es el que está haciendo el inventario físico.
Into live hands, so we try to impose on as few people as possible. So at this outset, thank you, Rich, and thank you, Todd, for taking this time at the end of the quarter when things are busy to be here on the show. So let's start in with the number one most voted up question that came from Spectrum. Now, we do take questions from Spectrum, which is our communication platform on robertsspaceindustries.com, but you can also submit your questions live in the Twitch chat if you're watching now by prefacing your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. That's going to help our community management team pull it out from all the other chat that's going on and send them on to me. But from the Spectrum thread, where folks got to vote, the number one voted question that we could address here today: why are the names so small on the ships that are...
¿Por qué el nombre de las naves son tan pequeñas, no? Pregunta de Spectrum.
That one. So essentially, it's not designed to be that small. So it's a current limitation we're looking to fix later on. So currently we have to account for a 32 character long names, and essentially we can't dynamically scale the font size based off the length yet. So we do want to make them larger, but if we just made them larger.
¿Qué quieren hacer los nombres de las naves más grandes, que simplemente ahora están así por una limitación que están intentando de solucionar?
Larger, but in the short term this was just an interim solution to get it out.
Yeah, as is often the case with Star Citizen, that we have T0 implementations, then T1, then T2. This first implementation was just about getting the tech working and functioning and finding out all those things that we need to still address in the future, like one of these things, like the character limits and the scaling size and stuff like that. There were also lots of questions. We'll just get two of the big ones right out of the way. The Rock DS, a brand new variant of the Grey Cat Rock mining vehicle. It was discovered in the PTU for patch 313. We'd been holding it back. It was one of those things we wanted to let people discover on their own in PTU. You don't know how many times I wanted to mention it in ISC, and we had it in footage. Like, no, we'll save it for PTU. And I'm like, I just want to show everything. I do want to say that we have a FAQ coming out on the website soon regarding the Rock DS.
Está comentando y escolando de que va a haber unas preguntas y respuestas sobre el Rock DS, que es el nuevo vehículo que hay de minería, que lo tenían reservado hasta poder liberar en el PTU, a pesar de que Liscolando quería enseñarlo, pero no podía porque no lo dejaban. Y de entrada, bueno, saber que al Rock, en el parche, al notar el parche, parece que le han aumentado la carga más de lo que tenía todavía y le han cambiado el láser para que sea un láser más potente que el Rock normal.
Friends than it is on your own. Now, that's not to mean that playing on your own shouldn't be fun. You shouldn't be able to do what you want. But in terms of the Green Rock DS, the plan was that it should be a more efficient way of mining and a more efficient way of doing the activity that you want, rather than having two smaller mining vehicles where you can go and do what you want. Having one singular larger vehicle, it's got a more powerful beam. It has a longer reach that can reach into areas that you can't get. And I know that there's not necessarily that's something that's going to be beneficial straight out the big box, but in the future when we add more accessible caves and things, that will become a factor. It's got 4 times the capacity of the...
Que ahora está comentando de que tiene 4 veces la capacidad del Rock base, que el láser va a tener más potencia y que va a poder va a poder acceder a lugares a más distancia, y ahora mismo quizás no es algo que se vea, o que se perciba, pero en el futuro con el gameplay que pondrán en las cuevas, pues el vehículo se sentirá más útil de lo que es ahora, y que siempre están buscando la posibilidad de que haya formas más eficientes de poder minar, ¿no? De poder hacer la actividad con diferentes escalas de vehículos.
I've talked numerous times about.
Check out Calling All
that creation of
Debs.
the box. Yeah, the creation of that box was always supposed to be a placeholder situation. You were supposed to be able to deal with. You're supposed to be dealing with them on a manual basis. So eventually, you'll have to remove those and basically be able to put them into your ship. But you won't just have this magic bag appearing in front of you. So when you talk about having the Grinrock DS having 4 times the capacity, you're actually driving into caves that are accessible, got a longer reach, they've got a stronger beam. Then all of a sudden, it becomes a reason like, okay, I get it. And when you're driving in the caves, you want somebody to be focusing on driving and not it tipping over and getting it, and because it's going to be rough terrain, and one person just focusing on the beam itself. So essentially, that is the high level intentions. Obviously, balance is subject to change depending on.
Está comentando que al final en las rocas pues te meterás en terrenos complicados, y que es bueno tener a alguien que esté dedicado a la conducción y otra persona que esté dedicada con el tema del láser. Que, que esas son las intenciones, ¿no? Lo que nos está comentando de las finales, ¿no? O el objetivo. Que todo está sujeto a cambios, porque siempre hay posibles balanceos, y que nos comentaba también el hecho de que, bueno, ahora sabéis que podemos ir a la parte de atrás del vehículo y podemos retirar una caja, y esa caja aparece mágicamente, que eso en el futuro no va a ser así, no va a ser de esa manera, ¿no? Habrá una interacción más real.
Better experience. So if you just want to go into the smaller vehicle and do it by yourself, you can do that. But then if you go into the larger vehicle, in terms of the Grinrock DS, it should be more efficient. You're coordinating with your buddies, and he's feeling like you've got purpose playing together. So
Claro, está hablando de que el hecho de poder utilizar el rock, el DS, con respecto al chiquitillo, que bueno, podrías utilizar el chiquitillo y hacer las cosas por ti mismo, pero al hacer uso de este vehículo más grande, la intención es que se gane en eficiencia y además esa parte colaborativa entre los compañeros.
RobertSpaceIndustries.com website, and if you're in PT now, continue to play, continue to comment, continue to leave feedback on it. Folks have already seen some minor changes to the Grinrock DS already. I think it just got a different mining head and stuff like that. I've been prepping for this, so I haven't been paying attention to that. But that is precisely what PTU and even Live Environment, which is also a testing environment, is for. Keep using it, keep giving us your feedback, and keep letting us know what you think. And keep an eye out for that FAQ. All right, moving on. What other questions do we have coming in? Are there any plans to make new asteroids mineable or replace?
Gameplay, gelotes, jugabilidad. Comentar la jugabilidad o diferentes formas de juego. Está preguntando si hay planes para hacer diferentes tipos de asteroides minables.
Technical issues that basically the team run into, and it makes it a very painstaking process for them. So once we fix that technical issue, then we'll actually introduce new minables. So, and those are direct words from Ian.
Okay. Let's see. Will bulk cargo missions make an appearance with the upcoming release of the Hercules? Now, the Hercules is not coming in 3.13. It's coming in a 3.13X patch later on. But with the Hercules on its way, bulk cargo missions?
No, not with that one. So once we actually finish the cargo adjustments, then we'll start seeing the hauling missions. And so it's once that comes in, then we can do the different size SU boxes, so on and so forth. So then it makes the bulk hauling, or makes it make sense.
Si cuando salga la Hércules va a haber misiones que llenen la bodega, ¿no? Y dice que de momento no, que cuando hagan la referenciación del gameplay de la carga, pues entonces sí vendrá ese tipo de actividad.
That's underway.
That's what I figured. We'll cover it when it's ready to be covered.
I can tell you, I can give you, in terms of I can give you some information, because obviously it's under the purview of inventories kind of thing.
Yeah.
Essentially, the biggest factor about refactor on the cargo side of things is making it physical. That's the biggest thing. So right now, for example, if you want to go and use the tractor beam to move cargo from point A to point B, or you want to pirate someone's cargo, you can't do that, because even though the objects have collision and you don't walk through them or anything like that, they're not physically represented in the world in terms of you can't interact with them and pick them up and move them. So the first factor is that we want to make it physical so that you can do that, and that's part of the road to inventory, or physical inventory, shall we say. And that, once we get there, that obviously then has many different tendrils that span off into like, okay, well, now you've bought something from the shop. How does the shop has to deliver it in a physical nature? Okay, well, how do those cargo boxes, how do you arrange them? Do we have some form of like magnetic snapping system so that you can then...
Claro, está comentando de que al final, cuando lleguemos al paso de que podamos tener diferentes tipos de carga, porque sabéis que ahora mismo la carga de las naves es una acción temporal, a lo que se refiere es cuando fisicalicen la carga, pues van a poder pues enfrentarse a más situaciones, como por ejemplo el hecho de cómo se maneja la carga pues a la hora de llegar a una tienda, o si va a haber algún tipo de atracción magnética entre la carga, o cómo van a resolver esa situación, porque al final lo que a nosotros nos interesa, ¿no? En un momento la idea es pues poder tener un rayo tractor y poder manejar esa carga de un punto A a un punto B. Y ahora mismo no es posible porque la carga no está fisicalizada, ¿no? La carga que vemos en las naves, es decir, cuando nosotros compramos diamante o laranite y demás en una tienda, en realidad no está fisicalizada.
Of course, we'll be covering it on ISC and stuff
Y eso es parte también del inventario personal, o sea, del inventario local, todo lo que están trabajando, que veremos asomarlo en la 3.14.
Is pickpocketing an intended feature for 313, or is it an oversight?
¿El robar bolsillos es una característica intencionada o es algo que ha salido así porque sí?
The feature.
It is a bug, unfortunately, yes. You can't roll Khajiit, you can't do sneaking, you can't pickpocket, unfortunately. So yes, it is currently a bug, and hopefully will be resolved. But that's not to say...
Dice que actualmente es un bug y que será resuelto. Pero pickpocketing, que al final es eso, lo de robar bolsillos y demás, que cuando salga el inventario local tendrás que como que aturdir al objetivo de alguna manera, pero podrás robar los bolsillos, ¿no?
Inventory stuff that Richard just mentioned. With hull degradation, windshields can become extremely hard to see through. What's the plan for us being able to resolve this in the field without having to call in a repair shop?
Well, some ships in the PTU are doing it more than we want, and even at 100%, it's still more than we feel is makes it visible fly through. So we're fixing them as we go, and then some of them will be disabled for live if we can't fix it in time, and then...
Está comentando sobre el degradado de las naves, del casco de las naves, que parece ser que hay un problema relacionado con que el tema de que la visibilidad se ve muy reducida a través de los cristales y ventanas. Y están comentando de que tratarán de resolverlo, pero si hay naves que no son capaces de resolver para el live, pues lo deshabilitarán hasta que encuentren una solución y se mejore esa visibilidad.
Hey, I can go out there and magically clean this or squeegee it down just yet.
Have you seen those Mystery Clean magic erasers though? They're pretty...
They are wonderful. I use them as much as we could.
Está hablando en el futuro de que la posibilidad de poder salir a limpiar el cristal o de alguna manera, y que bueno, que eso también es algo que se están planteando.
On a totally unrelated note, you can get a can that you can spray on, like, you put like stickers. My daughter's always putting stickers everywhere.
Yeah.
And you try and pull them off and it leaves all the stuff. You can get a spray that you spray on that and you just wipe it off. That stuff is...
Isn't that just WD? We usually use WD-40 for that. Or
fixes
Goo-Gone.
Everything. Yeah, Goo-Gone.
I'm not sure I'd want to spray that all over my house.
Actually, true story. The night crew at Home Depot, when I used to have to mop the entire floors at Home Depot, and they make us spray WD-40 on the mop before to basically give the concrete floor a shine. That was back in
Slip
1990.
hazard. Slip hazard.
That was back
Yeah.
in 1997. I don't know if they still do it, but that's how they did it in 1997.
Están hablando de un producto que no conozco que se llama W40, que por lo visto el tipo dice que con un spray se podía sacar las pegatinas de una nave o sea, de una superficie y todo eso. Hablando de, o sea, refiriéndose a la posibilidad de poder limpiar el cristal de la nave de alguna manera, hacerle ese mantenimiento para poder recuperar la visibilidad.
This is actually Rich, but
I know.
But
Yeah, yeah.
Rich, go ahead and say your part, and then I'll chime in.
I think in 3.13 itself, it probably won't change the core experience. Those are features that have come from my teams, and generally in an ideal world, we'd release features with all the other teams that have coordinated on, and we'd get them live in a situation where they're fully integrated into all of the gameplay loops in the game. Star Citizen, though, is a vast game and has lots of different systems. So in this implementation, it's going to be very similar to when we released body dragging. The trolleys are there, the mounted guns are there in the locations that you can go and use them, and it means that we can get feedback for people, from the field, and so it's already highlighted several issues on the Avocati and on PTU, like the trolleys, for example. They've been put in a location that's not really fully suitable for those those gameplay mechanics right now. For example, the stairs, there's elevators, the elevator and stairs, they don't really talk well nicely with the trolleys. But what we can get an idea of is, do the trolleys feel nice? Do they work?
Están preguntando sobre la experiencia de los solis, ¿no? Que son los carritos para cargar cosas y demás. Está diciendo que lo que podemos esperar de esta mecánica ahora mismo, que Star Citizen es un juego muy, muy bestia y tal, y en un mundo ideal, si todos los equipos estuvieran coordinados y estuviéramos en un entorno de live, pero que el juego todavía no está ahí. Entonces ahora lo que podemos esperar de esos carritos es la misma sensación, o sea, la misma interacción que hemos tenido con el arrastre de cuerpos en su momento. Está ahí para que se pueda probar y dar ese feedback, y lo mismo con las ametralladoras montadas, que todavía falta trabajo, ¿no? Aparte también están comentando del hecho de que quizás muchos de los carritos no están en la situación ideal, hay problemas en las escaleras, o pues, bueno, ya sabemos qué pasa con las rampas también, a la hora de comunicarse con los elevadores, o sea, o de entrar a un elevador, que no hay una comunicación buena en el juego y también da problemas.
Working through some of these issues, where we're at in the quarter, so I can't say, okay, this is exactly how we're going to use these things until I actually get the feature and we can play around with it in missions or even just in sandbox experiences. So with these things, most of the time that Rich's teams are developing these things, we want them used in sandbox experiences. So you're coming around and you get to a location and you're like, oh, I want to use this or I want to use that. But with missions, we need time to actually implement them into missions and be able to build missions around these features. So that's kind of how we work. We work in a staggered development. So Rich and his team develop these things, put them out, and then my teams take some time and basically implement them into.
Claro, están comentando esto acerca de la implementación de misiones para carga y demás, o misiones que requieran la utilización de esos carritos. Entonces, que está diciendo que Richard, digamos, lo que hace es, el equipo o los equipos que están con Richard trabajando, implementan este tipo de características en el juego, y luego el equipo de Todd Papi sería encargado de utilizar esos útiles que han puesto, esas características, y tratar de evaluar para qué misiones pueden implementar, y que eso lleva tiempo.
It would have had a core use case of going in space, but that was a really good use case of that mechanic that really highlighted it. So that's when it works really well, that's the goal. And obviously, because we're in a live production, you get these kind of staggered development. And just on the case of what is the goal of mounted guns and trolley push pull in terms of how it is supposed to change the gameplay experience. In terms of trolleys themselves, we want that to be tying into, moving cargo boxes and being able to, have your cargo delivered to your hangar rather than just automatically spawning your ship, and then you'll have to, manipulate up onto your similar to like if you.
Está comentando que al final el objetivo de los carritos con respecto a la carga sería pues el hecho de poder manejar la carga hasta el punto de poder ir a un hangar de tu nave, o sea, ir a un kiosco, por ejemplo, pillar las cajas que sean y llevar con ese carrito hasta la nave la carga y luego pues descargar la carga en tu nave, ¿no? Por ejemplo.
Where it's like, a simple like Last of Us puzzle where it's like, okay, I need to be able to get up to a high location, so I can now move this trolley. It's got a box on it. I can mantle up the box, and now I can get to a high location. So allowing it to unlock gateways. And on the mounted gun side, this is something that we've been really pushing on for the mixed arms combat, because you probably noticed that the mounted gun is a ship weapon.
Mhm.
It takes down ships. It absolutely erases people, but it takes down ships. So the hope is that you can have a fortified location and fight back that fortified location, or AI can use it in the future to fight you back, and you've got to either go in on the ground and disable them, so then you can bring the ships in, or for later when we do, player-owned locations and things like that. So it's all about offering different opportunities.
Claro, y con respecto a las ametralladoras montadas, están ahí, pues tienen armas de nave, son capaces de bajarse una nave. Definitivamente revienta a los soldados de a pie. Y la idea pues es eso, que sirva pues para poder tener una fortificación, una zona fortificada y demás, o tener que deshabilitar ese arma para que puedan, pues para que puedas entrar al lugar, que los NPCs los utilizarán también en el futuro y demás, para defenderse o para atacarte.
A lot of bugs around the doors, because what should happen is that the door shouldn't close.
Right.
As an emergency, it's like if I go into an elevator now in my in work, if I'm stood in the elevator tries to shut, and then it detects them there, or it tries to crush me for a little bit, and then
Yeah.
and then pops open, and that's what should happen. But clearly, game physics creates some fun things. But yeah, we need that just needs to be fixed on the game code side, and when we build them in, it gives us this additional quarter to fix those issues.
Part of me hopes there's always some way an elevator can kill you in the game, though.
There always will be.
Están hablando del tema de los elevadores y demás. Y bueno, que poco a poco tendrán que arreglarlo, que al final la idea es que si un elevador cierra la puerta que no te aplaste, ¿no? Que llegue hasta un punto y vuelva a abrirse, pero bueno, que eso lleva tiempo y que a lo largo de este trimestre están trabajando en eso.
Partially. So obviously the 30Ks and any sort of crashes and stuff like that need to be fixed, and that's on our side, so we need to fix those. However, if you die from combat or messing up mining, just putting too much juice into it, crash when landing or anything like that, you will lose the items. I mean, it's basically like you upgrading a ship or anything like that. You will lose the weapons unless we start getting into insurance, but that to me is a little bit at a later date. But yeah, the idea is that if it's something that you did versus a crash or a server crash or a client crash and stuff like that, then yeah, that's on you.
Fair. This question comes up a couple times. Are all flyable ships getting equipped with SDF shields visually and functionally with 313?
So yes, all ships will have them. The new visuals predicate replacing the entire hull or old hit detection method. So under the hood, the gameplay is the same as before, but with better visuals and feedback. But yeah, the idea is that we're sweeping through every single one of them.
Yeah. Can't have the SDF shield visuals without the SDF shields for
Correct.
those visuals to
Yeah.
go on. It would be very confusing to have one without the other one. All right, let's see. Can we expect better frame rates in 313?
Estaban comentando un poquito sobre el síndrome de Stanfield, están implementados en todas las naves y demás, y sobre perder los componentes de minería, que en realidad los componentes ahora mismo, si los equipamos y demás, pues sí, los vamos a perder, porque en realidad está intencionado que se pierda, igual que en el futuro perderemos las armas de las naves. Lo de las armas y los componentes fue una solución temporal hasta que estén los seguros que vendrán más tarde, y luego pues tendremos que asegurar esos componentes. O sea que si ahora mismo si perdemos los componentes de minería, pues es lo que hay, lo cual es una putada porque son bastante caros. Y un 30K o algo de eso, pues nos va a hacer perder eso, ¿no?
We're happy with, completely, but again, we're constantly doing optimizations. We're constantly going through and reviewing the rad captures on it and making sure that if there's a feature or if there's content that's causing something to spike, we can actually fix it.
And it's important to remember that the frame rate and optimization thing is something that's being tackled by multiple teams from multiple
Yeah.
angles. Graphics are working on stuff with the Gen 12 renderer. The network team is constantly working on stuff. You got the stuff for iCache and meshing and stuff that's all designed to help. So there's no one silver bullet for performance, and I think that's
No, unfortunately not.
Que ahora están comentando sobre el rendimiento, sobre si se va a incrementar los FPS o... Bueno, al final el rendimiento del juego. Entonces se está diciendo lo que dice Discolando, no hay simplemente una bala de plata que consiga todos los resultados de rendimiento, sino que está el iCache, está el server meshing, hay una serie de tecnologías que se están trabajando junto con esas dos para tratar de mejorar el rendimiento.
Before might have been a little too risky or something like that, but obviously with time we were able to solve some of those issues and move forward with it with new code or even new ways of handling stuff on the content side.
Yeah, it's just I just want to take another moment. It's just really important to remember. We see the posts. I see the stuff on Spectrum and on social media and on Reddit and stuff. And we're waiting for this and waiting for this and stuff. But it's really important to remember that, like object container streaming before and stuff like that, there's no one moment where everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows. It is going to be this plus this plus this plus.
Y ahora está comentando Discolando que en cuanto al rendimiento no va a haber un maravilloso momento en lo que todo sea día de sol maravilloso y arcoiris, que es un proceso de una cosa más otra, más otra, más otra. Ir trabajando poco a poco hasta que se consiga ese rendimiento deseado.
Performance is a death by 1,000 cuts.
Yes.
And essentially you have to look at those and look at where they are and identify them and working on them. But, I know there's plenty of people on my team who are just purely dedicated to performance. There's definitely a big initiative this year to try and improve it. So we just have to evaluate and keep at it.
Yep. And when all is said and done, when we look back on it, we'll see that it's a collection of things, all this work from all these different teams that all work together in concert to get us to this performative a space that we're all working towards. So, okay. Sorry, just little expectations management there. It just always, it hurts me personally when I see people talk about, I'm just waiting for this because that's going to be the moment, when it's like, that's not how it works. Okay, what are the ship serial numbers based on?
Aquí están basados en el número de serie de las naves y el equipo de Star Citizen de trabajo son unos 600 empleados o más, ya, es muy grande.
Consistent value of data tag that is associated with that ship. And essentially it's called the ship entity GUID. And essentially that is what it's based on. So it's persistent until you reclaim your ship, and then we entitle you a new ship, and then that has a different GUID. So essentially it's a way, if you imagine we've got thousands of different entities, tens of thousands of different entities, well, actually hundreds of thousands of different entities in Star Citizen across all of the game, they all need to be uniquely identified. So we have this unique identifier that's assigned to all of these items. It's not just a ship, like everything has it. But yeah, for the ships, this was just something that we could base it on. It made sense, kind of like a number plate. They have to be unique.
Las entidades, que hay muchísimas en Star Citizen, hay cientos de entidades, si no miles, y pues cada una tiene un identificador. Entonces, cada vez que reclamemos una nave, vamos a tener un número de serie diferente. Y está basado en esa idea, de que todo en Star Citizen tiene un identificador único.
To switch sides once we've started going in one direction.
So this is going to be there's no real clear definitive answer on this because it depends. So if you're switching sides to a reputation that is at the direct opposite, if I'm going from the Order to the other side, then they basically, when I'm ranking up reputation in one, that might be decreasing it in another. So obviously then switching sides much harder. But if I'm going to a neutral faction where it didn't really decrease it as much, it might be less. So it really is a variable experience. And I think, that's a design, it's been designed that way. Some will, some factions will hate each other more than others. Some will like more than others. So that's as the clearer answer I can give,
Yeah.
because obviously it's not just as simple as everybody hates each other. Or
Si necesitas cambiar de facción o de lado cuando salga lo de reputaciones y demás en el live, ¿cómo haces? O sea, entonces está comentando de que depende de la reputación que sea, pues habrá más odio entre unas u otras y que va a ser algo que va a llevar un tiempo, que no va a ser tan fácil como eso, ¿no? Si tenemos, por ejemplo, Bog y tenemos Norrock Security, pues son muy opuestas, no va a cambiar. O Miles, por ejemplo.
Oh, I know why. Because the Spawn Closet card has been on the roadmap for a while now. It's currently in the 3.13 roadmap, but it's still.
Por cierto, comenta sobre las reputaciones que algunas están diseñadas para ser más neutrales, otras que haya más enemistad entre unas y otras. O sea, que va a haber variedad, ¿no? En las reputaciones que hagamos.
So, I mean, it basically it allows us to have better control over the way that the AI spawning allows us to do the randomization, on it, so that we can randomly choose which ones are spawned, and then they don't look cloned. And then for us, in particular from a design perspective, it allows us to set up and do things a lot quicker, a lot easier. Now, for basically 313, it's not going in. For 313 later patch, we're basically going to be reviewing it, but for 313.0, it's not going in. But basically, we'll be trying to exploit it in very kind of small sequences and kind of test it and see how it rolls out. So we'll be testing it possibly in 3.13.1 or in 3.14.
Okay.
Están hablando de los spawn closets, que es los armarios de aparición para los NPCs, que dice que va a agilizar muchísimo el tema desde el punto de vista del diseño del juego, y que no saldrá para la 3.13.0, que quizás salga para la 3.13.1 o si no para la 3.14.
Friends through a cave system.
Right now, the way that we think about caves is we haven't prototyped a huge like hole or anything like that, for you to fly in. And basically, we tried one out a little bit, but like we haven't really gotten into it to basically say, okay, yeah, this feels right. Now, as far as linking up to holes, that to me is where, from a tech standpoint, I think that's a little bit more difficult. And then it's also just creating that content so it lines up perfectly. For us to be able to drive into them or even fly into them and have more of a flight or driving experience into the caves, or those entrances, yes, that is something that we're looking towards. And it could be that, yes, that's just the end of the cave and it doesn't, branch out into the FPS area or anything like that. We want to be able to have all those options, even
Están hablando de las posibilidades de unir dos agujeros de cueva, tener una entrada y una salida, o una salida y una entrada, según por donde se entre. Y el hecho de que ahora mismo no hay de ese tipo, pero están mirando de que puedas, pues eso, hacer una travesía con una nave o con un vehículo.
Wasn't necessarily built the same way that we procedurally do our caves, and so that's the part that we're going to be looking at is how.
Claro, están mirando de que a la hora de hacer ese tipo de diseño, que quizás no sea la forma en la que están diseñando de forma procedural las cosas en la actualidad, porque tendría que tener una entrada y una salida clara. Entonces, que es algo que tienen que mirar y que lo están mirando para el último trimestre del año.
To justify the use of the rock or the rock DS.
We have some, but it's not to the full extent that we want just yet. Again, these came in this quarter. We always give the teams a little bit more time. We place some minables in there, but then we'll evaluate it, and look at the telemetry, of players actually using it and players breaking it there in those caves, and then we'll be using it more in the future.
Okay.
Con respecto a los minables y demás, que han puesto algunas, van a tener atención a la telemetría y demás, pero y pues añadirían en el futuro para evaluar cómo está el tema de tener minables en las nuevas cuevas que apenas hay, ¿no? Están comentando la gente.
Just one box at a time.
Now, I'm assuming that they're talking about the turning in, like sell all instantly aspect. In the future, yes. I mean, we need to basically adjust the way that we do selling. Right now, it's not very friendly. But then, obviously, in the future, we will be looking at bigger quantum-sensitive cargo in general. So, like versus just basically a 0.5 by 0.5 meter box, we'll be looking at the big, maybe 32 SCU boxes, or the even a 1 or 2 that you have to use, the cargo beam to use, or the tractor beam to move around and to then.
Están comentando sobre las misiones de Quantum, que ahora mismo pues como que la venta y demás, que es un poco tediosa, el sistema que tienen ahora de kiosco para vender es un poco tedioso. O sea, no es del todo friendly, ¿no? Dice. Y que eso, pues, están mirando pues, sí, de cambiarlo en el futuro, incluso de hacer apelaciones de cajas más grandes, ¿no? De cajas más grandes, e incluso tengas que moverlas con un rayo tractor, o de un punto A a un punto B, etcétera, ¿no?
Watching it. Hi, cat. So I just saw your cat.
Cat has entered the room.
It is honestly amazing how few cat moments we've had over the last year of work from home, all told. Let's see, what else do we got here? The proximity comms panels now work in the third person point of view. Is this a bug or is it going away? And this question came from a lot of machinima people who are hoping desperately that it stays.
Well, it's yes, I got your sarcasm there. It's a bug. It is going away. So the idea is that obviously with text, what we'll be doing is making sure that you can turn it on or off.
Están hablando sobre el tema del texto global, o sea, del chat global, que ahora mismo se ve en F4, que hay gente de Machinima preocupada por eso, la gente que hace películas o vídeos con el motor de Star Citizen.
Thing or something later.
I've called it out for 313, so yeah.
Cool.
Hopefully.
De hecho, ya en principio creo que ya está arreglado, me parece.
Why do all the ground vehicles beat themselves to death in about 5 kilometers of driving, even if you don't hit anything? And are there any plans to look at this for 3?
Si hay alguna, si hay para poder revisar el tema de los vehículos que explotan, o sea, porque no se puede, son inmanejables ahora mismo.
And kind of the way that the ships were basically damaging themselves, or the vehicles were damaging themselves as they drove over it. So, but basically, I don't know if we've gotten everything, but if you're playing it and you're seeing it happen, obviously, please use the issue council, and we'll try to. We'll look at it.
Parece que lo han resuelto. De hecho, hay un tema de eso en el parche, que si vemos alguno más, que por favor que lo pongamos en el issue council. En línea recta, sin colisionar con nada, te explota igual el vehículo.
After we merged the supply and demand from all the servers into one pool. Currently, this person says that they cannot buy any significant amount of commodities. Is this being looked into? Is this our intention? Is this where are we at with this?
I think it depends on kind of what they consider significant amount, so, it, in particular for certain shops and stuff like that, they're not supposed to be carrying a hell of a lot of inventory. So then also the way that we refill that inventory changes and adjusts, and basically, where it's currently at, in particular with these changes going in now, we will be updating. I can guarantee you we will be updating it. So, and then it will just be stuff that happens. I don't know if it can be hot fixed, and if it can be, then we'll update it right away, and won't require us to do a new patch. So.
¿Qué pasa con el tema de la carga y demás? De que no se puede... el comercio, ¿no? De ir a un outpost y llenar la nave y tal, que ahora pues parece ser que no está funcionando. De todas las cantidades, o sea, que no se puede tener una gran cantidad de carga, ¿no? Y dice que en realidad que las localizaciones no están, digamos, optimizadas o pensadas, ¿no? Para para tener ese tipo de carga, como simulación, ¿no? de outputs. Y que de todas formas echarán un ojo, revisarán y si se puede hacer un hotfix o lo que sea, pues lo harán, ¿no?
Which is under my remit in redoing radar scanning, they will be displayed as part of the scan. So when you scan a ship, all of the party information, the ship name, ship information that you get will be integrated into that one AR marker around the ship entity, and then you'll have all the other information on the scanning. So yeah, the plan is to display it where it is. Anytime where you see the ship, you should see the ship name, but it's just a phased release because the Mobiglass is such a big.
Claro, están comentando sobre el tema del Moviglass, de poder ver el nombre de la nave en caso de que se escanee y dice o sea, en caso de que la veas, la tengas a vista. Y que sí, que están planeando en eso, en que se vea cuando termine de trabajar en el escáner y demás, pues que también incluso aparecerá la información en el escáner o de escanearlo y demás, ¿no? Ya sabéis que para eso van a utilizar la tecnología de Building Blocks y que bueno, que también comenta de que hay que tener en cuenta además que el Mobiglass es una gran bestia, ¿no? Son muchas cosas ahí metidas.
Now, basically, I think it depends on obviously the size of the asteroid, and can it hold something that would actually warrants, a big enough cave or even creature, to be in there. But like I would love, there to be able to go out and explore those big caves and come into, different creatures as well as different minerals and different challenges that obviously you could EVA through those things versus crawling through them.
Yeah, I think that's.
Dice que el tema de la posibilidad de que haya cuevas en asteroides y demás, y que depende del tamaño de los asteroides, pero sí que le gustaría el hecho de poder ir a asteroides y ver pues en una cueva y entrar en EVA, en actividad extravehicular, en vez de hacerlo como se hace ahora de la forma tradicional y que haya pues, recursos o incluso criaturas, ¿no? Que poder explorar o descubrir o enfrentarse a ellas.
Yes, again, that's the same deal with the Flash. ASUP Terminal UI is currently built in Flash. Eventually, it will be transferred over to building blocks. When we do that work, the ship name should be displayed on the ASUP Terminal.
Okay, I know it's such a.
Cuando pasen a Building Blocks el ASOP Terminal, que son los kioscos donde sacamos las naves y tal, las pantallas amarillas, que aparecerá también el nombre de las naves cuando pasen toda Building Blocks.
There are multiple exploits right now, which are affecting some of the most popular gameplay systems. Are the developers aware of this, and can we expect any adjustments regarding this issue?
Hay muchos exploits ahora mismo que afectan a la jugabilidad. ¿Están los desarrolladores conscientes de esto?
So we do daily live sync meetings with basically the player relations in the community, and then from there they bring up anything that they're aware of. So obviously we try to fix as many as we possibly can. Some of them still might not be fixed. But if I'm more than happy for people to call them out and basically bring it up again and say, hey, let's fix this or call it out on the issue council.
Dice que tienen a diario una reunión sobre este tema, del tema de los exploits y tal, y que trata de corregir todo lo que pueden, pero en caso de que alguno no esté corregido, pues que puedan hacerlo, ¿no? Que puedan.
My dad text messages me about exploits. About there's a UEC duplication thing, and please tell somebody and stuff like this. So I would appreciate.
Está diciendo Discolando que su padre le ha mandado un mensaje reportando un error de que se está duplicando los UECs. Que se lo comente alguien del equipo. Qué grande el Discolando, por favor.
I'm gonna do that. All right, let's see what else do we got. Back to reputation here. Will a server client crash lead to bad reputation?
So currently, reputation loss for missions.
Si nos crashea el juego, nos llevará a tener mala reputación por haber fallado la misión.
The system doesn't differentiate between failure abandoned due to logout, disconnect, or you actually doing that. So right now, it's kind of a one size fits all. Obviously, we'll just obviously, things change going forward, but right now there's no differentiation between that.
Okay.
Ahora mismo no hay ninguna diferenciación que te sí casé, no completas la misión o la abandonas tú, ¿no? Con respecto a la pregunta que has puesto ahí, luego la contesto. Ahora tengo que seguir con esto.
For the Merlin when docking.
It's only available for docking, and it's automatically controlled when in the docking mode, and the constellation is targeted. So it's very specific right now.
Gotcha. Let's see. What is the reason and current state for shields not keeping up with speed in combat? A fast-moving ship is leaving its shield behind. Anybody we don't have somebody from the vehicle team on the show here.
That sounds like a bug.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
Están
bug to me.
comentando sobre que con una nave rápida que deja el escudo atrás, que eso como que es un bug, que no está todavía implementado de esa manera. Y comentaban sobre el sistema de acople de la Merlin, porque ahora sabemos que si le das a la N targeteando otra nave, te pide igual la petición, pero no hay ningún tipo de control para acoplarse. Ahora mismo, el sistema de acople es... la mecánica de acople es exclusiva para la Merlin en el parche actual.
Get
it evaluated.
It's a selling.
Para la Merlin con la Constellation.
As you leave your
Shield behind.
There's also somebody asking if it's going to be possible to hide our ship names and ourselves, like broadcast no transponder. Maybe since you're part of the new radar scanning, you might have a thought on that.
Well, the premise long term, especially around radar and scanning, is that everybody should be having a certain signature that they emit. That signature will obviously contain information because, by UEE law kind of thing, you have to send it out. So when you scan something, you will obviously be able to find that information, but you have to be within a certain range to get that signature rating. You have to, the ambient of the area that they're in. So if they're in the coil or they're in a gas cloud or something like that, then it's going to be harder to get that information. But then obviously if they're in your party or, they're in your guild or org or that kind of thing, then, that information will be transmitted to you. So I know that we've talked a lot of times about, bounty hunting and...
Claro, están comentando el hecho de hasta qué nivel podemos llegar a obtener información de una nave, si se puede ocultar el nombre y demás, o se puede ocultar tu identidad. Pero es algo que dice que no va a venir pronto, pero bueno, para el futuro está planteado el hecho de que, bueno, que si está en tu parte o perdón, otra organización sí que tengas esa información, pero si estás en una nube de gases o algo que genere interferencia, o directamente pues que hay un sistema o va a haber un sistema, un escaloncito más, ¿no? Para que la persona o la autoridad consiga la información, toda la información de la nave, ¿no?
Heavily tied to performance. So the more ships that we spawn, the worse the server gets, so on and so forth. So, basically, right now we believe everyone gets three per player currently, but the third is the first one to get cleaned up. And then once we hit that limit, then it hits the second, and so on and so forth. So, it is a known issue, and basically, ideally, with server performance and other factors that are coming in, this will be helped, and so then everybody can have 3 ships or 3 vehicles, spawned, kind
of thing. We know from looking at the public roadmap and ISC this quarter that originally ship-to-station docking was on the docket for Alpha 3.13. It's not coming with 3.13.0. Can you give us an update on where it's at, how it's doing, when we might see it?
So actually, I missed a go no go.
We both
yeah, that was happening
in this slot.
Yeah, basically in this slot. So 30 minutes ago. So I don't know. I haven't checked my email, but I'm assuming it was a go.
Están diciendo de que de si el ship to station docking, ¿no? El acoplamiento de a estaciones, si va a salir que no sale en la 3.13, si se va a retrasar o no. Y dice que realmente que en realidad que se perdió el meeting de go to no go. o sea, de go no go, ¿no? Que es el meeting este que hace para validar o no validar una cosa para un parche y dice que tendrá que chequear, que tendrá que revisar su correo, pero que confían que sí, que sea un para adelante en esa mecánica.
Reputation affected by the deeds in unmonitored space?
Short answer is no. So essentially, reputation doesn't care about monitored or unmonitored space right now.
Right, right. Uh,
La reputación es monitorizada tanto en... O sea, no importa si estás monitorizado o no para la reputación.
vendors. Actually, there's a lot of questions in the chat about the kind of things reputation gets you, and we covered a lot of it on ISC. But since there's a
Muchas
giant
gracias,
number of
Lothar.
questions, I think we should probably cover a little bit of it again.
I mean,
What are the benefits?
That's the plan. I mean, it's in essence like if you think of frequent flyer miles or anything like that, you know, kind of in real life, you use it, you get perks. It might be that you get an item for free. It might be that you get 10% off. It might be that you know now it allows you to access it or load quicker, or you get moved to the front of the line, per se, on this stuff. So you know there's multiple ways for us to go through and
El tema de las reputaciones, de cómo afectará el tema de las tiendas, de pues que encuentres descuentos, que encuentres o que te den un algo gratis, ¿no? Algo gratis por tener una determinada reputación, o que puedas ascender puestos en una cola para un determinado recurso que te interese.
one way or the other. So it could be that
Que hay muchas posibilidades en las que pueden aprovechar el sistema de reputaciones.
hey, you did so well. Now let's say with a certain oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the word. A certain corporation, you do well. Now you get to fly their ships, or you get to fly one of their ships or something like that. So let's say you're a
Claro, dice, vamos a poner por caso, ¿no? Que lo hayas hecho muy bien con una de las corporaciones que hay en el juego y dicen, bueno, pues ahora tienes la posibilidad de poder volar sus naves. ¿No? Cosas como esas, por ejemplo, ¿no? Como, bueno, hemos visto en el pasado una misión que había, te hacía Pacheco, en la que nos mandaba recoger una Cutlass Black para hacer una misión, que la quitaron, ¿no? Esa misión, la verdad que está guapa.
kind of what's they're geared towards, the mission givers or even the corporations, then think of that's the way that we'll be looking at gifting things and unlocking certain tiers.
And especially on the if you think about the ship progression in the game, the ship progression is very much driven economically. Obviously, you will have potential other ways, like Pod says, in terms of the reputation to be able to unlock different ships. But from an actor or FPS side of things, if you own an Idris, the choice of which armor or which weapons or which food you should buy is obviously minuscule. You just buy the best that you can get because the pricing is never going to be the same as an Idris. It's like saying to Jeff Bezos, hey, like which island do you want? And then in the same conversation go, which packet of crisps do you want? It just doesn't, it doesn't tie up in terms of progression. So reputation is definitely going to be the underpinning of the progression for the vertical progression.
Están acabando de que la reputación además será una parte muy importante para el progreso, la progresión de las naves, incluso de que te desbloqueen ciertas naves, tanto como las armas, armadura o lo mejor que puedas conseguir, pues será totalmente basado en tanto, por una parte, la economía y por otra parte, las reputaciones, que te desbloquearán esas posibilidades.
Whereas the P6LR is more about single strike. But it's a choice about playstyle rather than a choice about one is better than the other. And we do want to offer that vertical progression where you can get better performing, whether the barrel's been changed or different materials are used to go into making the gun or the innards, and so that they are direct upgrades. And those things are things that you shouldn't just be able to go to a store and just say, oh, look, it's an extra 10,000 credits or whatever. It's those things should be locked behind the mission, and then that will give players a bit more clear objectives, like, oh, I want to get that thing, I have to do X, Y, and Z.
Claro, están hablando de, por ejemplo, si nosotros queremos conseguir pues actualizaciones directas más allá de comprar un componente, sino mejorar un componente que ya tenemos o poder mejorar las placas de la armadura de nuestra nave, pues la idea de que haya una misión que tengamos que hacer o hacer una determinada historia, ¿no? Para poder tener acceso a ese tipo de objetos en una tienda.
Oh, I want to get this particular item or gear, so I'm going to do these specific missions. And then it gives, then you can work towards the.
Claro, está diciendo de que al final también está el hecho de que lo que hay no es, o sea, hay un punto que sí, que hay cosas mejores que otras, pero también hay la parte de los diferentes estilos de juego que va a haber. Y a partir de ahí, pues gente que quiere hacer coger diversos caminos, pues para poder obtener esos objetos que quiere, para esos objetos específicos que quiere para su nave, su equipo o lo que sea.
into their work, and I think there's a ton of opportunity for other teams, mission teams, content teams, featured teams, and to all look at the reputation system when it's fully going and firing and all thrusters, to be like, how could we integrate this into our new content? The locations team, all that stuff. There's just so many things that we can do with it. It's really exciting.
I like Rich said before, like I do view this as a linchpin, or maybe it was you that said it, but
Yeah.
I do view this as a fundamental building block, for the way that we unlock things and move the game forward for the players.
And it's a chance for our Star Citizens to become infamous.
Claro, está diciendo. Está diciendo. Está diciendo Top Papi que es que el tema de la reputación es que es algo fundamental para poder desbloquear ese objetivo que quieren tener en Star Citizen, de que tengas que hacer determinadas cosas para obtener pues determinada experiencia de juego, ¿no?
That's the plan. So unless something basically
Right.
hits the fan, then then we're not going to change it too much.
We always reserve that right.
Yeah.
That's why we're operating with a UEC instead of regular UEC. That's why we have this.
Exactly. But again, the reason why we don't want to wipe constantly is, again, this sounds wrong, is because we want to make sure that we're going through and we're earning a ship and stuff like that is a very long-term goal. Before like doing any sort of FPS purchases or anything like that, we always view those as short-term goals. But earning a ship, that's a long-term goal, and we want to see, okay, is that something that you need to grind for 3 months or 6 months or a year to get? And so just to see if our numbers are right, for tuning and those types of purposes. So obviously that ties back into the exploits. Yes, we want to know of any exploits because then that's shortcutting the goals and the goalposts and everything like that we have.
All right, Todd Pappy, you don't want to wipe constantly. Send the memes to Disco Lando on Twitter because I'd love to see them. All right, everybody,
It sounds wrong.
That's our show. That's our show. Thank you so much, Rich and Todd, for doing this, just coming on at the end of every quarter before these things. And this has become a Star Citizen tradition going back like the last 2 years now. So I appreciate you taking the time out and you're not being too surprised with me when I come up and like, it's time. And you're like, yeah, okay. You guys are really good sports, and I appreciate it. We are going to raid somebody. We're bringing the raids back. Looks like we're raiding. Let me see what the message from Tyler is, because they do it. It's because I remember when I messed it up the first time. Space Cutlet. We're raiding Space Cutlet today. Space Cutlet is known for these CIG how about feedback tweets that I see on Twitter all the time. That's what I know him for. But he's a pretty good streamer. He should be streaming right now. So join in for the raid. For Todd, Rich, I'm Jared. Remember, new episodes of ISC return on April 22nd. And until then, see you in the verse. I never really developed an outro. It's like I've been doing this.
Vale. Pues terminó ya el show. Al final dijo Todd Papi que no va a haber wipe. ¿Okay? No va a haber wipe, chicos. Que bueno, que siempre está diciendo de que no quiere, o sea, no va a haber reseteo de las cuentas, del dinero, de las naves y todo eso en este parche. Dicen que, bueno, que ya sabéis que quieren tratar de establecer o encontrar el punto adecuado por si una nave, pues, recalcando, ¿no? Pues una nave está pensada que sea un objetivo a largo plazo, no es algo que, como por ejemplo, que tú te compras un arma o algo para la primera persona, ¿no? Digamos, una Gemini o lo que sea, ¿no? Al final, pues están hablando de eso, de pues tienen que mirar para conseguir una, por ejemplo, una Constellation, que hace falta, cuántas horas de juego hacen falta, ¿no? Que al final, pues, se trata de que sea algo que nos cueste conseguir, ¿no? Y bueno, pues eso sí se sumáis todas las reputaciones y demás. Y que además también van surgiendo los exploits y demás. Y consiguiendo atajos a la gol y tal. Bueno, pero que también ayuda a identificar ese tipo de exploits para poder acabar con ellos y que no lleguen a la gol. Eso sería nefasto. Y vamos a ver, tenéis una pregunta sobre la carga. No sé a qué te referías con lo de la carga. Anugal 86. Si estás por ahí, me preguntas otra vez y te digo. Y con la misma nos vamos al juego.